Hello, my name is Callum O'Neill, and I am the founder of an experiential training and coaching organisation called TACT. Each one of us has a story to tell of how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted upon us, our families, our friends, colleagues, our clients. The daily news bulletins broadcast the ever-increasing numbers of global deaths. What isn't being counted yet is the mental and emotional strains, stresses, and anxieties it is causing to so many of us. Almost 350 years ago, Sir Isaac Newton penned a letter which contained a now rather famous quote. If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. So for this series of vodcasts, I have humbly and most gratefully climbed onto the shoulders of my Henley Business School alumni to ask them if they might share their experiences and expertise from the perspective of returning to work or continuing at work with COVID in mind. In this vodcast, I'm joined by Fiona Wilkinson and Kate Hesk. Fiona is a Henley Business School certified coach and is also certified by Cognomie as a mental fitness coach. In the interest of transparency, Fiona and I were cohort colleagues on Henley's Masters in Coaching and Behaviour Change. Joining Fiona is Kate, the founder of Cognomie, an organisation whose aim is to develop a foundation of mental fitness globally, particularly around proactive and preventative strategic approaches to psychological and emotional well-being. When we met, Fiona and Kate spoke about how working from home, or the constant loop of being furloughed, then returning to work, only to be furloughed again, affects everyone differently. As such, both employers and colleagues need to be sensitive to this and ensure that mental health is always on the agenda. Here's Fiona Wilkinson and Kate Hesk. Hello and welcome back to the latest in our series of podcasts on returning to the workplace with COVID in mind. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by two people who work in the helping professions who have a perspective on how to support our colleagues and our employees back into the workplace as we transition from working at home to either fully back into the office or working from a hybrid model. My guests today are Fiona and Kate. I'd like to welcome you both to the podcast, and if I can ask you both to introduce yourselves.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm Fiona Wilkinson. I'm an executive coach, and recently I've been becoming more interested in the whole area of mental fitness. So have become an accredited coach with Cognomie. I also have a long background in the commercial sphere, so quite a lot of experience of how mental fitness or issues and concerns play out in the workplace. So that's one of the areas I'm really interested in, and how the current situation with working from home and so on impacting all of us.
Absolutely. And Kate, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Cal. Very good to be here. My name is Kate Hesk. I'm one of the co-founders of a company called Cognomie. We exist to develop the mental fitness of the world. Mental fitness is a focus on psychological and emotional well-being, and is a proactive and preventative approach which enables individuals, teams and organizations to understand their current level of mental fitness, but also to build strategies and development to enhance and improve mental fitness. So in the world that we're facing right now with the pandemic, this is so important in the field of mental health and well-being to be doing something proactively and positively. And so looking forward to the conversation that develops today.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, both. What got both of you into the helping professions? What was that little lightning spark that made you decide that this was the life for you?
So it goes back quite some time. So I won't make it too long a autobiography, but I think it was certainly in my early days on the graduate scheme in a pharmaceutical company in my early 20s, when I was often told that I had great potential and I needed to show more confidence. And I had no idea what that meant. And if I had known at that time that I could talk to someone to help me understand more of myself, to help me explore my values, to help me think about, what I'm bringing to the world, and how I can be more mentally fit in myself at that stage to help me be more of who I wanted to be, that would have been so valuable. And if I take it back even further than that, as a teenager, to be able to find a way of expressing yourself or tap into who you are and who your authenticity is, to get that as early as possible in your career, would be so useful. But actually, so often in my experience, we have to wait till we're in leadership roles or management programs to be able to get some insight through the opportunity to do some self-awareness and tap into what we know about ourselves and how we can use that to our best effect. So, long answer, but what drives me is bringing that early to people so that that every individual can understand themselves better and create their own sense of mental fitness, well-being and performance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you. And for you, Fiona?
Well, just to demonstrate what Kate's just been saying, I think it was very much a gradual process for me as I went through various leadership roles. And over time, I've discovered that I'm much better and more powerful when I'm working one-on-one with people. And I have been told I'm, a very good listener, and out of concentrated listening and really working effectively with individuals, I've seen that you can have real impact and make real change. And that's what motivates me in the coaching world. So I think everything we've been talking about with mental fitness is all about normalizing this conversation as part of doing good business. So working effectively, giving individuals something small that they can start with to begin to make change, give teams the common language, and give businesses a really powerful tool to set themselves apart, which will become important sooner or later again.
In relation to mental health and mental fitness, from Cognomie's perspective, why would you say it is critical right now to support that?
A number of reasons. If I just give my view on that, a growing awareness that individuals and organisations need to really show a duty of care around what we call mental fitness, but ultimately what becomes mental health. So there is a responsibility. There's obviously within individuals, there's a sense of uncertainty and ambiguity about what's going to happen over the next months, years for us globally. And so organisations do have a responsibility to support the conversations that can emerge to help people develop their mental fitness by becoming more aware of where they are now, how well their thinking patterns are helping them, how well their emotional control is helping them, and to develop strategies and tactics for improving those areas to be at their best so that people can become happy and fulfilled and optimistic once more. And we'll perhaps talk a bit about the data that we've captured globally, which shows actually there is optimism out there and there is positivity and there is creativity, but we need to help people sometimes find that to be at their best.
And for you, Fiona, as an executive coach, how are you finding that COVID is impacting on your clients? And how is Cognomie informing your practice?
I find a range of different emotions amongst clients. Some are really enjoying the freedom of working from home and the ability to create some balance in life. Others are really struggling with feeling isolated, perhaps not quite sure how they can really add value in their work environment. And at the same time, a lot of people are obviously struggling with managing children, perhaps parents who may not be well as well. So really feeling squeezed and unsure about how to balance all of those different demands. I think in business in general, whilst there is a much greater awareness of health across the spectrum, so people's mental health and fitness, their ability to balance things as well as physical health, I think there are still, in a number of cases, there is stigma, or people feel uncertain and lack confidence. It feels like a weakness to say, I'm struggling, where in reality, facing up and being open and starting a dialogue is perhaps the bravest thing that any of us could do. So for me, the big thing that a program like Cognomie does is start to open up a conversation, make it an acceptable conversation to have. And if I think back as a line manager, the idea of being given a common language. So, you know, it's fine to talk about I'm having a bad day, or I've just got some other things I need to focus on, because I trust that my team will have my back, will be doing the best, and that overall we're all working towards the same aim. But it takes a bit of work to get to that position, I think.
Absolutely. It's so fascinating what you say about the stigma that's attached to mental health and mental fitness. It's something, you know, we don't talk about, we sweep it underneath the carpet. And yet if we were to compare that with physical health, not only is physical fitness and health encouraged, it's something that people put on Instagram all the time. Yet you don't have to be physically ill or physically disabled in order to care about your physical health. So yeah, I'm absolutely with you on that stigma issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's about acknowledging that we all feel different at different times. There are different kinds of external factors, and it's about what we choose to take responsibility for. So in the same way that I might choose to run or whatever to keep physically fit, taking control is what this is about to a large extent. I don't know if you would agree, Kate.
And having some exercises to use in order to do that. So do I go on the running machine? You know, what are my strategies? What are the techniques? What are the exercises that I'm going to use? And people can access that individually and on their own and find their own strategies and ways of developing their mental fitness. And sometimes we also need an instructor or a fitness coach / mental fitness coach to help us do that thinking. So working with a thinking partner can really help people become much more aware of how their mental fitness is serving them right now, and to then tap into more strategies, more ways of working, more ways of being, more tools and techniques to help develop all of these aspects of mental fitness in the same way as we do, as you say, Cal, when we go to the gym and choose how we're going to do our fitness. Yeah.
I love how you use that word, that phrase, thinking partner. Is that a phrase that you use at Cognomie deliberately?
Completely, yes. We have a global community of thinking partners / coaches who are also psychotherapists and counsellors and hypnotherapists and psychologists, and people who help individuals but also groups and teams to help them think about how they're thinking, to help develop with them their strategies for being more of their best self and stepping more into that space of fulfillment and happiness and mental fitness.
I see. So you have a real broad bandwidth of specialists who contribute.
Definitely, yeah. So generalists in coaching sense, but also real specialists around areas such as sleep, anxiety, stress, physical health, as well as relationships and communication and all sorts of different aspects. So many of the community members are real specialists in those areas, and others are more generalists. And we match the individual practitioner or thinking partner with an individual client, so they get the absolute best out of their experience with that support.
As thinking partners, I'm assuming that the work is still very much driven by the client, in which case, how can they help themselves to manage their stresses and anxieties that are associated with returning to the workplace with COVID in mind?
Well, there are lots of tools and resources out there, many of which come through us and we make available to people to help people pause for a while, become more self-aware, to become more mindful of what's currently happening for them and with them. And I use the word mindful carefully and advisedly because there's a lot spoken about that. But let's say mindfulness with a small m, meaning that we pause for long enough to notice. So giving access to immediate resources for individuals is something that we do, but anybody can Google and access all sorts of resources to help develop their mental fitness. But in order to know where to look for that, they need to be aware of what they're currently feeling and how they're currently thinking. And so we also create our own surveys and make surveys available to individuals, but also organizations, to help create that awareness. So creating an insight through capturing data through questionnaire that we can play back to the individual in a personalized report, but also back into an organization to show the level of mental fitness and where the highs are, so where things are working well, but also where there's a need for some development.
Okay, I see. And what would be the experience for the client?
Yeah, so captured through a questionnaire, straightforward 12 questionnaire looking at the foundations of mental fitness. We've got some data that we could perhaps have a look at in a minute, which shows the data that we've collected over the last 6 months. So through brief questionnaire, and then the individual gets a playback of that as a comparison with the rest of the data that we've collected. So the relativity around their level of mental fitness compared to the rest of the population, which gives some insight and awareness raising around areas that they know that they're doing well with, where they're feeling strong, and other areas where they might like a bit more support and development, either through resources we've described or through a specific conversation with somebody, through one of our thinking partners or practitioners, or somewhere else within the organization. There's a lot of organizations have a lot of things already in place that we can interact with and integrate with as well.
And regarding the questionnaire, Kate, what is it that they're measuring exactly? How do you know which questions to ask?
So it's a model that we've built within Cognomie. Our model of mental fitness is informed by many different theories, coming from positive psychology, coming from leadership theories, coming from performance, from coaching, from self-improvement, if you like, or performance evidence that we know is out there. So over the last 20 years, we've been collecting all of the different theories and influences of that. And from that, we've driven what is a model which is very much based on positive psychology, strengths-based approach. So what it looks for in the questions that it asks is, where are things working well? So what are the strengths that are already there that we can tap into and use positively? It's very easy at the moment in a lot of the conversations that we hear to think about what's not working as opposed to what is. So the model is very much derived to enable people to notice what's working well, how can you do more of that, as well as where are some of the areas that you might want to improve upon, individually, but also collectively.
I really love what you're saying there about it being strengths-based. When we look at what we're thrown at every single day on TV, we've got all those multiple news channels trying to push tragic stories down our throats that everything's terrible. The truth is, wouldn't it be wonderful if people could hear great stories about human resilience, about us overcoming obstacles and despair and pretty much everything that's thrown at us?
Definitely. Yeah.
I think if you look at when you look at the survey and you compare individual results against the population as a whole, in my experience, that's actually quite a reassuring process, because you realize everybody sees shades of good and less strong in absolutely everything. And so by looking at a very broad spectrum of all the things that one might be concerned about, it gives the individual the option and the ability to decide which particular aspects of mental fitness they might want to concentrate on, or which are most important to them today. And that might be very different from actually what the concern might be in a week's time or a month's time. It's very much, I think, Kate, kind of dependent on what the individual is experiencing in the moment. So it's very situation specific.
Definitely. And people go through highs and lows all the time, don't they? So by presenting the data back to an individual or to an organization, you can get a sense of what might be happening at the time that the survey was created, with a view to, as we've said a number of times already, encouraging a conversation. So creating insight in order to say, okay, so what is this telling us, and what's happening as a result of what we can see here, and what do we want to do about it? So that piece about personal ownership comes back in as well.
I love what you're saying about it being in the moment, about noticing those actions and reactions, you know, about kind of being in the now, what's going on right now. One of the things that I'm kind of curious about is, you know, where did the acorn of Cognomie come around from that has grown into this big oak that we see now? What's the story behind that?
Yeah, there were three things actually that have come together and align beautifully with what we think the world needs now. One is mental fitness as a concept. So this proactive, this preventative, this early stage conversation around what people are thinking and feeling to enable individuals, but also organizations to stay well. So mental fitness is at the heart of what we're doing. So the creation of the model that we've described. And then the community of thinking partners and practitioners and coaches that we have across the world, the passion and the vision is to create community, so that it's a community of like-minded individuals who are passionate as well about mental fitness and want to work together, learn together and grow together in order to deliver the service that we offer. So that's a really central part of what we are at Cognomie. And all of that is enabled in our ability to work at a global scale and do this excellently because we have a technology platform. So the interest in bringing together well-being, if you like, and technology, but with a human face is absolutely everything that we're about. So we have a state-of-the-art technology platform that enables us to not only measure the mental fitness for individuals and organizations, but also to deliver development solutions and measure their impact. So through the platform, we can collate and create data which show how much impact we're having and how much the mental fitness of individuals and organizations is improving over time.
I think you've sufficiently whet my appetite enough to ask you, what is this data of which you speak? Do you have something perhaps that you can show us today?
I do, Cal. So we're going to look at, in summary, one small part of one of the surveys that we have utilised and put into practice over the last 6 months of the pandemic. So this is our mental fitness pulse benchmark survey. So part of the conversation that we've had so far has been very much about the individual aspect of mental fitness. We have an extended survey that we also make available to individuals when they're working with our coaches and the practitioners in more detail. But this survey we've used is a summary, so it's just 12 questions and is designed to enable organizations to take a pulse check. We're calling it a pulse benchmark, a pulse check for where they are as individuals, but also organizationally, in terms of these 12 aspects of mental fitness, which form the foundations of our model. But we also show through the data that we collate back to an organization, we will show the averages. And this is an example here, which I'll explain a bit more detail in a minute. But we also show variance, and we also ask the question, where would you like to score yourself? So the data that you see presented here have come from the 895 surveys that we've put into place over the last 6 months as an offer to organizations to take a pulse check within their organizations. You'll see on the cog the average scores across those 12 areas that we've surveyed. And on the right hand side, you'll see the high, the low, and separate scores for stress and anxiety. As you can imagine, stress and anxiety are an inverted score. So a high level for anxiety is generally bad, whereas a high level for confidence is generally good, if that makes sense. And stress.
Absolutely.
But what this tells us, so this is real data taken from the surveys that we've conducted. Very easy to go straight to the low numbers, and I'm sure many of our eyes are doing that. But actually what we encourage organizations to do is recognize as well, where are the strengths that you have that you can build on? So resilience and confidence and motivation as being a real expression of what's working well within an organization that an individual is feeling during this time. There's a lot that we can learn and encourage people to tap into through conversation with each other. So we facilitate those conversations, but we also invite organisations to start, as Fiona said, speaking the language and talking about these areas as well. So focusing on what's working well, but then also, of course, noticing where are people struggling a bit, where is there room for more support. And in this example here of all of the surveys that we've collated so far, work-life balance, maybe not surprisingly, is the lowest score. Optimism and sleep also coming within those low scores. And work-life balance is fascinating because the more conversations you have, in my experience with people about work-life balance, the more cross people get about the term work-life balance and this overlap between work and life. And why does it actually have to be considered the same thing? They're two very separate compartments for many people, but what we've all been forced to do over the last 6 months is blend and merge those two aspects. So what this can help an organisation understand is how people are feeling about their working patterns and the need to be working at home or not. But it can create such huge, rich conversations for people just to tap into asking the people that have completed the survey, what caused that? What's the reason behind it?
You know, it's really useful having that graphic, because just as you were speaking, I was looking at it, trying to plot out, oh, now where am I on that? Yeah, it's really interesting, really focuses the mind, doesn't it?
It creates reflection in itself, doesn't it? Even if these aren't your scores and isn't your data. The word I like to use, and I hope I'm using it properly, is autotelic. So in and of itself, the process of looking at the questionnaire or considering the data here creates me to be doing some thinking and reflection on my own.
It's really interesting. And I think what to its strength is it's really simple to digest. Now, I may be jumping the gun here. Maybe you're about to tell me there's now 24 pages to go, but there are so many diagnostics out there when it is 20 odd pages that you have to go through. But I'm really appreciating the simplicity of the spidergram here. And as I said earlier on, it really just does help me focus, and I guess kind of gives us a common language.
And so what we hope it does then, exactly that, Cal, is it stimulates a conversation. So whether that's with one other person or whether that's into an organisation that's completed the survey for their subset, let's say, provides data and insight for people to then start to unpick a bit more. You know, what's contributing to this? What do we want to be different? What's in our control? And what are we going to do about this individually and collectively?
Really fascinating. Thank you so much. Now, you said that you had another couple of slides to show us. As you kind of segue into that, I suppose the burning question that I have is, in what way does all of this support our viewers and listeners in terms of them managing their transition back into the workplace with COVID in mind?
So all of those conversations can emerge, can't they? And so the next graph I'll show you then can kind of speak to that a bit as well, Cal, because what we do is, as standard, is we will run the survey and then a few months later we'll run the survey again. So we can see the change for the organisation. So that's important, particularly when things are changing so quickly right now, because what we're looking at now is almost completely different to what was happening before the summer, actually, in terms of the way people are feeling and as things are progressing, as you say. But what we can also do is look at the variance. And this is important to your point there, because in any organisation at any time or in any system, some people will be thriving and feeling fulfilled and things will be going okay for them, and other people will not be doing so well. And within any of these 12 foundations, some people will be managing and other people will be looking for some support. And so the variance here shows us the highs and lows within each of the 12 different foundation elements. And so a great conversation can ensue here within an organisation or a group, for example, where there's such a range within sleep or motivation, and help people really tap into what's causing that. So why is that a problem for some and not for others? And how can we help each other, or how can we be helped to improve in the areas that we want to improve in? So again, tapping into where things are working, let's use those into conversation to help people improve where they want to.
One question that's coming to mind now as I look through the table that you have there is that for some people, these can be a journey rather than a state. So
For example, you know, we can leave the house happy and we feel great and fantastic. And then all of a sudden we go, oh, did I leave the iron on? And the next thing you know, you're not happy, you're anxious. So how do you manage to apply measures to these?
Yeah, definitely. It's a great question. So absolutely, it's situational, as Fiona said earlier as well. We have the broader questionnaire, which gives much more background to why somebody's happiness score might be as it is. But in isolation, what we see here is a subjective expression across 895 surveys and all the people that contributed to that. And of course, every individual has responded in their own way, in their own subjective way, based on their own immediate feeling and sense of happiness at that moment. So it's completely subjective, it's completely sensitive to the moment they're in. And yet, if we can present this back as an insight, or if we can generate this insight for an individual or a team, we can have a conversation around that, and we can draw on each other's experiences or our own experience. If I'm working with a coach, I can be saying, well, I was happy yesterday, don't feel so happy today. And they would help me think about, so what created that yesterday? And if you want to be the same, what can we draw from to enable you to get back to that state? So wherever it comes from, there's insight that we can draw from when it has been more positive or when it is more positive elsewhere within another individual. And so that's why the conversation is at the heart of all of this, whether it's a conversation with ourselves or a thinking partner, or with a manager or a leader, or across an organization, or with a peer support. We want to get people talking about this. And as Fiona said at the beginning, bringing it beyond putting it under the carpet and the stigma that can be out there of talking about any of these perspectives, actually.
Absolutely. And again, what I really like about it is it's given a common language to talk about. And through looking at those ranges, you can look at the highs and lows, and you can start to share that information. And once you feel confident to share that with others and really kind of explore that vulnerability, that then reveals the courage and the things that you can start to work on from there. And you know, it's important to kind of embrace our vulnerabilities in order to build our resilience. You know, it isn't an insta world out there. We're not all perfect.
And as we talk about it, the word I would use is normalize. So we realize that the insta world is not the real world when we start to talk to each other and we're honest with each other and share what's actually happening. Yeah,
that's such a great point. Great point. You said your last slide.
So the final perspective that we offer in this short survey, and I think anybody watching this recording will also have access to the opportunity to take this for themselves and to see how they benchmark against others. But really importantly, we ask people, where are you now and where do you want to be? So this whole piece around momentum and personal responsibility and taking control and ownership of what we can do with what we have in front of us. So in this example, you'll see the biggest gaps between where collectively their respondents are now and compared to where they want to be is around anxiety. So they're feeling very anxious and they don't want to be as anxious. So that in this data set is coming down as we described, because that's the more positive. And optimism. So they want to feel more optimistic. And so what we encourage for individuals as well as organizations is to think about, well, so where is that working well? What's within your control? What's outside of your control? And how can you feed off each other to help that? As well as what external support might you need in terms of resources being made available, or thinking partners or group exercise and development. So this gives a perspective on what's the potential, where's the development opportunity, and by, again, interrogating this in a bit more detail, we can get a real sense from people in conversation around, okay, so what would contribute to those better scores for the future? And work-life balance, again, jumping out at us there. In terms of the conversation that's needed to be had around what would enable people to feel at an 8.2 for work-life balance.
So it gives, in effect, a kind of detailed gap analysis, which is also a great coaching tool as well, because it really keeps the focus for the client. Wonderful, great. So moving on then, how can this tool be integrated into employees and organizations' day-to-day running of the business? In what way can it give I guess, support the employee in a sustainable way regarding their mental health and mental fitness.
Yeah, so important that it's not seen as just a one-off snapshot insight. So working with strategy, so building this as part of an overall mental health or well-being strategy, and mental fitness being an early stage of that is so important. And it also relates, of course, to business performance. So it's part of a leadership strategy. It's part of a transition strategy for organizations that see themselves going through transition, because this is about helping people be at their best, give their best, and feel fulfilled. So when we do that, people will stay in the organization, they'll be loyal to the organization, and they'll be able to work at their best. So it's really important to see how it fits with organizational strategy, most definitely. And the insight is the first step of that. So knowing the data or surfacing the data, and the insight is the first step. It's then what do we do with that? So how do we create the conversation so people feel supported sufficiently? How do we put some resource around it so that they can have the conversations internally, but also with external supporting coaching organizations such as ourselves, or external development solutions that people want to access? So creating something that has a sustained impact is so important right now, because this is not something to just put a sticking plaster over and leave it and hope it heals.
Oh, definitely. And I think there's going to be a demand from employees to their employers to say, it's not good enough that you say that you support us. You need to show it. You need to demonstrate it. What are you going to do specifically to support us in this area? And it's going to take time. It's going to take time. Fantastic. Thank you both so much for this. One important question for our viewers and listeners out there: how can they get in touch with you?
So we can show you here an email address. So there's an opportunity to take this individual survey that you've seen expressed in the slides that we've shown you, so that you can benchmark yourself against the rest of the data that are there. So there's a link to that for you to do that individually. And if you're interested in taking that further for your own organization, at the end of the survey, there'll be detail of how you can connect into your own organization.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much indeed. As we move toward the end of this vodcast, final words from you both, please. Fiona.
I would say give the survey a go. It gives you a really good insight into some of the things you might want to think about, and then start planning and working positively.
Thank you, Fiona. And from you, Kate.
Thank you. So I would say pause for a while to notice how you're feeling and think about what you're thinking, and absolutely connect with the survey to enable you to understand that better, and give yourself space to develop these perspectives. So much of what we're doing now is at pace and overtaken by technology all the time. But if we pause for long enough, there's a lot that we can tap into that's really positive about how we're thinking and how we're feeling at the moment, and supported by a conversation with somebody. There's huge positivity in there, and optimism, I believe, that we can absolutely tap into, even at what is a very difficult time for many people.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you both very much, Fiona and Kate, for your expert contributions today, drawing from your experience and sharing it with us today. I really do appreciate it. And essentially, we're trying to offer some support out there, or insight or perspectives for employers or employees when they are transitioning back into the workplace with COVID in mind. Thank you again, both so much. And thank you to our audience for listening in to this, our 4th vodcast of the series. And please do watch out for the 5th. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.